Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be doing a deep dive into some letters.
Letters?
Yeah, it's a little different than what we usually do.
A little different.
We're going to be looking at some letters written by Gerald Gardner.
That's right.
And these letters were sent in by one of you listeners.
Always love that.
So thank you for that. And basically, they offer a glimpse into the world of the OTO in the mid-20th century. So that's kind of our mission for this deep dive.
Right. And a lot of people have heard of the OTO. It's been around for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But I think what's so fascinating about these letters is we get to see kind of the interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah.
And like the little rivalries and the conflicts that maybe don't get recorded in like the official histories.
Right, yeah, it's like behind the scenes stuff.
A little bit behind the scenes, yeah.
So let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
This first letter is dated May 20th, 1955, and it's written from Hampton, New Jersey by a Germer, most likely Karl Germer, to someone called Frater Eossic.
Gotcha.
And it's a response to a previous letter and a pamphlet from Eossic about a new order they were starting.
Ooh, so right off the bat, we got some drama.
Yeah.
Because Germer was the head of the OPO at this time.
Right.
And he was, kind of notoriously strict about keeping things in line.
So someone starting a new order, he probably wasn't too happy about that.
Yeah, not a fan.
And so how does he address this in the letter?
Well, he kind of lays down the law a little bit.
Oh,
He goes into, this whole explanation of like the history of the OTO, the lineage where it came from,
right,
like who had authority and who didn't,
Emphasizing that this new order maybe doesn't have that same lineage.
Exactly. Like you can't just go around starting orders.
Right.
You got to have the proper credentials, the authority.
Right.
And he even, he mentions this thing called the OHO that Eossic mentions in their pamphlet.
Okay.
And Germer's kind of like, I don't know what that is, but it's not legit.
So already, right off the bat, we have some mystery.
Yeah, what is the OHO?
Yeah, and kind of this power struggle between these two figures.
A little bit of a power struggle for sure.
So what else happens in these letters?
Well, we're just getting started, but just to give you a little taste.
Okay.
In the second letter, we see Germer getting even more concerned.
Okay.
Not just about this like organizational rivalry, but about the actual magical practices that Eossic is talking about. He specifically mentions this thing called the Isis Lodge.
Okay.
And he starts warning Eossic about the dangers of black magic.
So now he's getting worried about the actual magic itself.
Yeah, he's like, this is not good.
And so how do you interpret that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that these terms like black magic, they're loaded terms.
Okay.
They reflect the beliefs and anxieties at the time period.
Right.
So it's not necessarily about good magic versus bad magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's about like what was considered acceptable or dangerous within this particular occult world.
Interesting. So he's setting some boundaries.
Definitely setting boundaries.
Okay, so we've got this rivalry. We've got concern about black magic. What else do we see in these letters?
Well, there's a whole lot more drama to unpack, but we'll save that for the next part.
You'll have to stay tuned to find out what else happens with these letters.
That's right. We'll be right back. Now, before the break, we were talking about Germer's reaction to that Isis Lodge thing.
Right.
Calling it black magic.
Right, and you were saying that we have to be careful about those labels.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I was saying, they really reflect the mindset of the time.
Right.
Like what people were afraid of, what they thought was dangerous.
So it's not as simple as like good magic versus evil magic.
Right. It's more nuanced than that.
So in the context of the 1950s, what do you think was going on there?
We got to remember, this was a time of like huge social upheaval.
Right.
After World War II, a lot of people were questioning traditional institutions.
Yeah.
Looking for new ways of thinking and being.
So maybe occultism was part of that.
Exactly. It offered like this alternative path.
Okay.
This sense of like ancient wisdom, secret knowledge.
Right. And like you said before, it was a way to maybe rebel against the mainstream.
Absolutely. Like a rejection of conformity.
Right.
So these groups, like the OTO, they were attracting all sorts of people.
So Germer might have been worried about like who was joining and what they were bringing with them?
Yeah, he was probably trying to protect the tradition.
Keep things pure.
Exactly.
So going back to these letters then, what else do we learn about this conflict?
Well, the letters don't give us all the details about the Isis Lodge.
Okay.
But we can read between the lines.
Okay.
Germer seems really concerned about their practices.
So there were some fundamental differences there.
Definitely. Like different approaches to magic, maybe even conflicting beliefs.
And he doesn't hold back in these letters?
No, he's very direct with Eossic.
So this is a pretty intense rivalry.
It's definitely getting heated.
So how does this all play out?
Well, buckle up, because in one of the later letter images,
Okay.
Germer drops a major bombshell.
What's that?
He tells the Ossik straight up, you're not even a full member of the OTO yet.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Eosik's out here writing pamphlets, starting new groups.
I know, right?
But they're not even a full member.
It seems crazy, but it actually reveals a lot about how the OTO worked.
Like what?
Well, it shows they had this strict hierarchy,
Okay.
different levels of membership.
So you couldn't just waltz in and start your own log.
Exactly. You had to earn your way up,
Prove yourself.
right? Like an apprenticeship almost.
So Eosik was maybe jumping the gun a little bit,
Yeah, they got a little ahead of themselves.
but clearly ambitious.
Oh, yeah, definitely a go-getter.
So this whole thing with the Isis Lodge, it was probably a big no-no.
Yeah, Germer was not having it.
And all this talk of black magic
It was like a threat to the order.
to the established way of doing things.
Exactly.
And those cryptic abbreviations we talked about.
Oh, yeah, the secret language.
Do you think that was part of this hierarchy too?
Oh, absolutely. It was all about separating the insiders from the outsiders,
Keeping the knowledge secret.
protecting this tradition.
So what do these letters tell us about the OTO in general?
I think they paint a really fascinating picture
Yeah.
of a group that was both trying to preserve its past,
Right.
but also adapt to a changing world.
And Eosik was kind of caught in the middle of that.
Yeah, pushing the boundaries
Isn't in the limit.
and ultimately facing the consequences.
But also giving us this amazing glimpse into the inner workings of this organization.
Exactly. It's like a time capsule.
And that's why these letters are so valuable.
They offer us a window into a world that we might not otherwise know about.
Yeah.
And they remind us that history is full of these hidden stories,
These personal dramas.
these clashes of personality.
that shape the course of events.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into these OTO letters. One thing that's really stuck with me is that idea that these letters reveal so much about the people involved.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not just about like abstract occult ideas.
Right.
It's about their personalities, their struggles, their anxieties.
Exactly. Like we were talking about with Germer and Eosik.
Right. They're both kind of grappling with this changing world
And trying to figure out where they fit in.
and how to maintain their traditions.
That's right. And those tensions are going to come out in their interactions with each other.
So you mentioned before that it's important to consider the historical context.
Mhm.
Like, what was going on in the 1950s that might have influenced these dynamics?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that this was a time of like massive social change.
Okay.
Like you had the post-war world people were questioning everything,
Right.
looking for new ways to make sense of things.
So maybe occultism was part of that search for meaning?
Exactly. It offered like this alternative path,
Okay.
this sense of like ancient wisdom and secret knowledge.
And a way to rebel against the mainstream.
Totally. Like a rejection of all the conformity and materialism.
So Germer might have been feeling that pressure too.
Oh, for sure.
Like he's trying to hold on to the traditions of the OTO,
Right.
but the world is changing around him.
And new people are coming in with new ideas.
Like Eosik,
Exactly. Eosik's like the new generation,
pushing the boundaries.
testing the limits.
And that creates conflict.
Inevitably.
But it also makes for fascinating history.
Oh, absolutely. These clashes are what make the past so interesting.
Because it reminds us that history is made by people.
Right. Real people with real emotions.
And those emotions can shape the course of events.
Absolutely. Like, who knows what would have happened if Eosik had been a little less ambitious?
Or if Germer had been a little more flexible.
Right. It's all about those individual choices.
And that's why these letters are so valuable.
They give us that personal perspective.
That glimpse into the human side of history.
And they remind us that there's always more to this story.
Than what we see on the surface.
All right, we got to dig deeper look for those hidden connections.
And always be willing to question the official narrative.
Exactly. Because sometimes the most interesting stuff is hidden in the margins.
In the personal letters, the private conversations.
Those are the real gems.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from it?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's the importance of empathy.
Okay.
When we study history, it's easy to judge people from the past.
Right.
But we have to remember that they were living in a different time.
With different beliefs,
Yeah,
different values.
exactly. So we got to try to understand their perspective.
Even if we don't agree with them.
Right. It's about seeing the world through their eyes.
And that's how we can learn from the past.
Absolutely. And avoid repeating the same mistakes.
So to all our listeners out there,
Keep exploring.
keep questioning.
And keep an open mind.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.